All right. Welcome, everyone. Hi, my name is Tanaj Moody. I am the Director of Capacity Building and Learning at the National Black Women's Justice Institute. And we are here today for many reasons. One, it is Women's History Month. So, shout out to everyone who celebrates. And I want to really ground us in our discussion of what we at MBWI believe in, and a little bit around one of our initiatives that we have developed since last year. So at MBWI, we believe that Black women specifically and Black women and girls who return from incarceration deserve more than just a second chance, right? They deserve real opportunities to rebuild their lives, reconnect with their communities and their families. This means equitable access to resources, services, support systems that are not only reconnecting them with their families, but securing economic stability, feeling safe in their communities, and most importantly, healing. And so we created the Sisters in Solidarity Reentry Network. And to truly understand why this work is necessary, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the reality of this. The number of reentry programs specifically designed for Black women and girls falls very short of the need. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, 1.9 million women are released from prisons and jails every year. That's 1 in 8 people leaving prison and more than 1 in 6 leaving jail. Yet, despite this, most reentry services remain specifically designed for men. Black women in particular are disproportionately impacted. They make up 29% of the women's population, of the women's prison population, and nearly 3 times their representation in the general population. Yet, women are continuing to be overlooked when it comes to reentry support. And the truth is, women returning home from incarceration often have greater and more complex needs than men. And yet, women are met with fewer resources and are also faced with more systematic barriers, whether it's discrimination in housing, employment, access to healthcare, or even mental health services. But here's what we do know. Formerly incarcerated Black women have been leading the way in reentry advocacy, creating their own programs, demanding gender responsive and trauma informed services, and building the very solutions that the system has failed to really provide. And that is the foundation of the Sisters in Solidarity Reentry Network. It's a space where the expertise, the leadership, as well as the lived experiences of formerly incarcerated Black women are shaping the future of reentry support. The Sisters in Solidarity Network is around centering their leadership, fostering collaboration, and providing tools that are needed to drive real transformative change. So that brings us to why we're here today. And I want to thank you all for joining this, as this is our very first Sisters in Solidarity Network fireside chat. And this is actually going to be a quarterly series where it's going to be designed for a space where we share knowledge, raise awareness, and spotlight community innovative strategies for supporting justice impacted communities. And most importantly, ensuring that the voices of formerly incarcerated Black women are at the front and center in shaping reentry policy as well as practices. And so, part of this conversation that we're having today, which I'll soon introduce our amazing guests, is part of the Leading the Way campaign, launching this month in March. And this campaign is highlighting the leadership and the work of the Sisters in Solidarity Network members in honor of Women's History Month. And so, actually, this is the first fireside chat where we're really focusing on the power of community for justice impacted Black women as well as for survivors of trauma. And we're really going to be talking about the challenges of building long term support networks, as well as the opportunities for strengthening community ties. And most importantly, how can we begin to create spaces that are really fostering healing and growth? And so, before we begin, I just want to reiterate again the mission of the Sisters in Solidarity Reentry Network is to really champion culturally affirming, gender responsive, and trauma informed reentry services for Black women and girls. And this isn't just about reentry, it's about creating a space around equity, dignity, and just overall long term well being and healing. And the vision is simple, but it's super powerful in the sense where Black women and girls returning from incarceration not only need, but must have equitable access to the resources and services to be able to transition to homes and reconnecting with their family and to feel safe and to heal. And so, in today's conversation, this is an opportunity for all of us to really collectively think about how can we strengthen our community connections, break down some systematic barriers, and create a space for healing and growth. So, to get started, I am so honored to introduce our panelists and to be in this space and to just really dive into this really important conversation. And so I'm going to be doing a brief intro to our two panelists who are going to be joining our conversation on the healing power of community. So, our first panelist, I would like to introduce Dr. Donna Hilton, who is the president and CEO of A Little Piece of Light. Dr. Donna Hilton is a nationally recognized advocate, activist, and speaker committed to transforming the criminal legal system. As the president and CEO of A Little Piece of Light, she leads a community of organizers where women, men, gender expansive individuals who are directly impacted by incarceration are at the forefront of criminal justice reform. And Dr. Hilton works tirelessly, y'all, to really reverse the rising incarceration rates of women and girls of color and is truly committed to creating safe and healing centered reentry pathways for justice impacted individuals. And alongside Dr. Donna Hilton is our also very special guest is Stacy Borden, who is the founder and executive director of New Beginnings Reentry Services Incorporated. And Stacy is an abolitionist and a reentry advocate who founded New Beginnings Reentry Services to really provide trauma-informed, gender-responsive support to women reentering local communities. Really drawing from her lived experience and expertise within the legal system, Stacy's mission is to reduce recidivism, address systematic barriers, and advocate for survivors of domestic and sexual violence with a master's degree in mental health counseling. She is integrating trauma-informed practices, including drama therapy, into her work, working alongside justice-impacted women. And so without further ado, for folks that are joining, I just want to give a warm welcome and snaps to both Dr. Hilton as well as Stacy. Thank y'all so much for joining. Welcome, welcome. Did I miss anything? Because I know there's just more to add to the resume here. All
You did
right.
fine. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Great. I appreciate y'all for being here. I really wanted to start us off the conversation in just personal reflection and really talking around community and how it plays a profound role in healing and growth. So I was interested to know before we really dive in, what's a experience, whether that's personal or professional, that has really shaped the way you think about community, how it's helped you feel safe, supported, or even connected? And Dr. Hilton, if you could start and then feel free to transition over into Stacy.
Thank you for that question. You just had me pause for a second. I was like, wow. So I must say this. and you mentioned it briefly in your introduction, Tanaj, that, when it comes to women, Black women specifically, how do we feel safe? Where do we feel safe? And supported and connected, right? And there's been a lack of that and continues to be because we are the least supported, right? We are so underserved and overlooked. Um, but where I've found community is with sisters like Stacy, right? Sisters within the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, and their families, our families, right? Because I feel honored that I'm a founding member of the council, in my little small part, which is, you know, I'm honored. Um, those are the ways in which I feel connected. Finding groups of women with the shared experience, with that lived experience to understand this walk, right? That I can commune with, I can speak with, I can just like, maybe pick up a phone and just like, hey, this is like a moment where it's too much, it's overwhelming, right? I like to call them speed bumps. We oftentimes, those of us, we have speed bumps, and those who know me know I say this, those speed bumps happen and we don't know when they're going to happen, they're going to arise. And so, they can shake us a little bit, right? Because it's the trauma that the speed bump remembers, right? And brings back. And so, it's good to have a community of women that I'm able to share with and understand this walk. And I have to say, it's not just incarcerated women, because in this work, doing this work now out here, um, in this space now, for this 13 years I've been home, um, I have to say that women that have experienced trauma overall get it. Because trauma is trauma. Trauma is trauma, right? The effect of it and what the personalization of it, the trauma is real. What with the issue might be different, what's happening might be different, but the effects of the trauma is real and oftentimes the same. And so we experience the same thing. So unfortunately, right, because we're not a healed people yet, um, it still exists. The trauma still exists. They don't go away even after, decades and decades of, it just doesn't go away. But we work for that. We work towards that. But what we have right now is each other. And so
Mm.
I'm okay with that.
I love how you uplifted that. I appreciated what you said around the speed bumps as well, and just finding groups with shared experiences. And it doesn't always have to be directly impacted women, right? It's women who have experienced trauma as well. Stacy, what about you? What's one experience, personal or professional, that has really shaped the way you think about community, that has really helped you feel supported and connected? Unmute yourself, Stacy.
Oh, I thought I did. I'm sorry. I think,
Okay.
just what Donna said, being around women like Donna and the women of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls around the country, women are walking in that truth, and really gave us those spaces to express our trauma, our pain. Often we don't even know we're walking in trauma. I didn't even know what that meant. You say something about mental health and it's like a stigma. And I'm like, what? I don't have no mental health. But we do. I mean, anytime you've been harmed sexually and domestically, and then you're imprisoned and you're thrown in a cage, and particularly run by men, imagine. And so when I'm around women that really empowered me and allowed me to have a voice, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell that my older brother molested me as a kid. I couldn't tell that I was raped at 18 because I felt it was my fault because I'm hustling and I'm getting high and I put myself in. How do you say all that? Nobody had no right to take my body. I can't, I'm running around like, who's going to hear me that the Boston police beat me up and want it because I wouldn't let them see my breasts? I mean, all these things that we go through, trauma is real. And unless you're around other women, other sisters that allow you to feel a place of belonging, to really grow up, to really use your voice, and just walking your truth. And then you're empowered, and it's like a ripple effect. It's like, wow, Stacy was able to tell it, maybe I could tell it too. And I gotta owe it to my sisters. I left some sisters behind and made a promise to them that I was gonna come and get them. I didn't know how. I surely couldn't have done it without the power of the movement, the feminist abolitionists that have been doing this long before I came out of prison. You know what I mean? So that moves me. I wake up every day. Actually, I don't even go to sleep because I'm always thinking, like, what could I do next? Who's next? How can we shut this jail down? How can we stop and expose that God from sexually violating that woman in there? Like around the country in the federal prisons, women inside are being empowered and telling what's happening with them. I mean, the movement was able to shut down Dublin prison in California. This is how powerful this movement is. And so that moves me. That keeps telling me every day, we cannot stop because nobody's going to save us. Andrea James says it all the time. And I'm like, oh, do we expect somebody to really save us? And nobody saved us in decades. And Donna's right. 800% of incarceration of women going, 800% since 2015. We're being driven in prison environments. And we must create spaces for people to come out. And why we do that, we must begin to continue to teach each other to not allow another sister to go in. So some of the movement says, they're not about entry at all. No entry. But the bottom line is we got hundreds of thousands of women still in prison that got to come home. And we need to be ready and give them the services and stop the perpetual idea or the generational trauma and harm for their daughters and sons to end up in a prison cell.
Absolutely. I appreciate you for sharing that. And like, as you were sharing that, I was thinking of, you know, around breaking victimization ties to incarceration and what you had mentioned, a space for healing based on what you were sharing around your experiences is creating a space for women to express themselves. Like you said, like trauma is real, and anytime we're creating a space where we're allowing women not only to express themselves but having that sense of belonging and being able to use your voice is empowering, right? So as we're talking about, the power and the healing power of community, I want to transition a little bit to talk around what are some of the barriers, right? What are some of the barriers when it comes to accessing supportive networks post incarceration, right? So we know building strong communities post incarceration is not easy, right? We know that. And so in both of your experiences, can you share a little bit about, what are some of the biggest challenges that women who are directly impacted by the prison system face when it comes to accessing supportive networks in your own personal and or professional experience? Can we start with Dr. Hilton and then transition to Stacy as well?
Sorry about that. So I think I don't know if it's a barrier or if it's just blatant disrespect and lack of care and understanding, acknowledgement for women overall. Definitely Black women, right? That we know that. But I've been out here 13 years. When I first came out, there was small, little tiny conversations, little things about women. You know, everyone wasn't receptive and everyone wasn't trying to push the envelope, push that and like, hey, 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 because it's such a male dominated space. This reentry walk and just post incarceration, the whole thing. Because to date, we know that men still continue to be the largest incarcerated population. But to date, women have been the increasing incarcerated population now for 30 odd years. And so there have been more of us going into prison at a rate that is higher than the men, even though they had already, right, been the largest. So figure that one out. And I remember trying so hard to get, because I was blessed and fortunate enough to get a a, a job, get employment 3 weeks after I got out. And I was working for this company, Black Veterans for Social Justice, in the housing their housing department. And it was a struggle for women then. And not everyone there was impacted by incarceration. They were veterans, right? But we know we have veterans that are also impacted by incarceration. And of course, trauma, right? We'll know the military in itself is traumatizing. When I started trying to help, I recognized it with myself, but I thought, maybe because I did 27 years, I was a high profile, so, incarcerated individual when I was inside, all these things. So many factors that I thought, right here, I go giving excuses to the nonsense. And then I tried to help other women get into housing, get medical services, stuff like that. And I had to fight. And I had to call people out. And I didn't have a problem calling people out. No, and I still don't have a problem calling people out, right? Because right is right, wrong is wrong. And if you're in this space, in this work, saying that you're here to help those of us after incarceration, post incarceration, then damn it, do that for everyone. It can't just be for one gender or one demographic or one culture or group or whatever. It cannot be that way because prison doesn't discriminate, right? But it does, right? We know the majority of those of us, right, are Black. But what I'm saying is that it was so lacking in support, housing, employment, daycare, all these things that women, that we need, and medically too, because we have unique issues. We have unique issues that outside of medical issues and mental health issues, and so our issues are different, so they're unique to us. Um, and it was a fight, and then my platform grew, my platform grew, and Donna Hilton became a name and a figure and a voice. And I started calling it out in media, everywhere, everywhere. And it was like, uh-oh. Then I had people call and say, oh, well, we were able to secure 6 beds. We're putting them to the side. So if you have any women that you feel, I got those calls. But today in 2025, we're still facing the same issues. So you gave me 6 beds, but I might have 100 women that we need, not me, just me, but like we need to secure, we need to get them into a safe space. We need to get them a daggone bed. Hello? And so, those are the barriers that women continue again we continue to be the least, very underserved, the most underserved, overlooked, and just, I won't say forgotten, but not cared about, not valued, not respected, not understood that we also are part of this population. But no one, it doesn't seem to be a barrier when they need Black women to show up in this movement and to lead some stuff, right? Which I could, Stacy, and a whole lot of us, there's lots of us that continue to do. It's not an issue when it comes time for that, but it's an issue when it comes time to make sure that we're taken care of. And so that I struggle with that today. I'm having issues with that today. And yeah, I just have to call it as it is. We are just we are just the least respected, right? Most overlooked, underserved, least valued and acknowledged. You can go ahead, sis. It paused me because I'm really struggling with that still. I have issues come up just yesterday with a woman coming out after 23 years. Housing is an issue.
Right. Yeah. I think also uplifting what you said from the very start is just, when it comes to barriers, we talk about housing, mental health, medical services, right? All of these contributing factors, right? I rarely hear as much as we should be hearing around the lack of care, the lack of understanding, right? Of specifically working and providing resources and services to women and more specifically to Black women, right? And then just like the disrespect, right? Like you had just mentioned. Stacey, you know, from your personal and or professional experience, what are your thoughts around these barriers when it comes to accessing supportive networks upon reentry?
That's really emotional for me as well. I had an experience in the prison that I had my menstruation. And at the time, my canteen didn't come through. So I had to ask a male officer for tampons. Well, when you're a woman that's suffering, like Donna said, we're unique. We have different, hormonal processes. We have different periods. We have breasts. We have, stuff, right? I asked this man for a tampon. It was humbling just to go to him because I'm like, why couldn't a woman be on today? Not too many women officers are in state and federal prisons. And he looked at me. And now I'm flowing heavy because I didn't know I had fibroids. I didn't know why my cramps were so heavy. I didn't know. I mean, it's not like the prison gives us any health care. You're lucky you might get a doctor's appointment with a sick slip, right? Well, this man dropped the tampon for me to bend over and pick it up and then demanded me to get out of his office because the blood was coming down my leg. And I was so determined that when I came out of that prison, and mind you, when you buy the tampons in a prison, they're $12 a box for 8 for regular, not even super. You can't even honor a woman in a prison if you're holding us. You won't even give us our necessities. We can't buy super. No, of course you don't understand that there's a difference of, heavy flow and regular flow or light flow or none of that. God forbid women that were pregnant that was having babies and they gave them those hospital stupid pads that didn't hold nothing. But I walked out of there so tore up inside. I didn't even pick it up. I just walked out and he demanded me to get out before the blood hit the floor. I held on to that all them years. And I was determined that whenever I get a house, I'm going to fill it up with tampons. Before I even got the house, I spoke at a university. I spoke at Wellesley University. And a young girl was in the audience and started crying when I told that story. And she's like, wait, what? We get free tampons on, on dorms. You don't get none in a state prison? I'm like, no. So, I didn't want it to be a barrier out here. That was my whole mission. Give us some tampons. People were like, what do you need when you open? I'm like, we need tampons. We need pads. We need dignity. We got a woman called My Menses heard me. I think she's from New York, Donna. Young Black girl ran a program to teach women about the administration. And she had a grant that she got a wall unit that holds tampons and pads and came and gave it to us, installed them in all of our bathrooms and loaded us up with tampons and pads. I mean, that's a strong barrier because when I was a little girl, and I don't mean to be so blunt, but you got to tell you the truth. I didn't know about what was happening with me and my sexual abuse. I used to use the cardboard of the tissue and stuff myself because my mom, she kept tampons and pads, but nobody taught me that that's what was happening. I thought the blood was from the sexual abuse. And I wasn't alone in that, hearing that in the prison. So I knew what we had to do when women came out. I wasn't going to allow that to be a barrier because we're always afraid to ask because of how we were treated in a prison environment. And so, the other barriers that when we opened, I had a reentry residential for 3 years. We had 10 beds. We could never get full. We asked for 15. The zoning board, the community didn't want us here and only allowed us 10. That's a barrier when you're in your own community don't even want you to come out of prison back home. That was a fight. And so we had 10 women. And for 3 years, I could not get the proper funding to keep this going because regulatory, the codes and compliances to have a residential reentry program, first, you couldn't be around schools or daycares. We weren't. Second, you had to have 24 hours. Third, they was trying to force me to partner with the DOC or parole. And I'm like, for what I've seen in halfway houses, I came out of prison, I had to work my way up to understand how to run a house, right? I wasn't willing to do that because they cuff you up when you're on the ankle bracelet or when you're writing out your itinerary. If you're late, they don't care that the bus system shut down because the transit line broke. You're going back to prison. I was like, we're not going to do that. And so it was a learning lesson the last 3 years of really trying to give the women the trauma-informed care and love that they need and deserve. And it was a lot of barriers to do that. Parole, you can come in, but we don't do urines. I'm a behavior specialist. You know how many times we were in a prison, had to strip search and go pee for somebody? You want me to do that to the women in here? I'm not doing that. I'm not the police. You all have an office. It costs a lot of money. I'm not getting funded to have pee cups and none of it. Take it out of there. So those barriers started affecting our organization. And so I had to make the strong, and even being told that I'm not cooperating with public safety. Well, we're not public safety. We're community safety. We're bringing our people out of environments that are very harmful, that don't give us trauma-informed care. They don't give us nothing as women. And so you all are public safety. That's what you created. We create community safety.
Mm-hmm.
We're reconnecting our families back to our women, back to their families and children. That's safety in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've disrupted that. And so, long story short, I had to make the hard decision to, when they said, well, we're not sending you any more women, I'm like, well, y'all don't let half of us out anyway. I've never made it to 10 beds. I always only had 8, up to 8 women. At the end, it was only 4. How are you going to keep getting funded for 4 women? Not saying they didn't deserve it. But I'm like, okay, Stacey, you did the best you could. You did the best you can. We freed some sisters. We have a movement. We don't have to stop that. Let me just transition and give them a different part of services.
Right.
Give them a day center with a whole bunch of other stuff and partner with who needs to be. I mean, it was a long learning lesson, but we know the barriers of employment because of the Corey. We know the barriers, if you have a transgression of murder or sex offense, you're not going to get that closed. And so you're already barred from housing, employment, and everything else anyway. That's why we have this unhoused population that we have. It comes from the prison environment. So you're punishing us twice and triple times.
Mm-hmm.
By not giving us the fundamental right of housing and employment and care. When you talk about care, we never ever talk about, let's do some yoga stuff. Let's do some mindful meditations. Let's go to the doctor and make sure that we need our breast exams and nothing is sneaking up and having cervical cancer, or we're not having endometrial cancer or lung cancer or any of these cancers that potentially the prison environment caused anyway. Those weren't healthy environments. Like, we need to keep it real. And if you come from the Black and brown poor communities, you already got hazard environments. So, when you bar us from all this stuff, even after we did the sentence, it's a whole barrier in itself. We don't even know how to go to the doctor to have a pap smear because you couldn't get one in prison half the time, or you had the doctor that want to mess with you. And what women know how to speak up? Half of us had lived in prostitution because we had to feed our families in our own bellies. And now you want to take advantage of me in here too? I'm not going to see the doctor. I'll wait till I get out. 20 years from now, I'll see a doctor for my pap smear. I mean, all that stuff. There's some deep stories and deep rooted trauma that we've had to live with. Now we're dealing with residual effects because how we had to survive in there is how we think we have to survive out here, because you've been already indoctrinated in how to live there. So how do we shut all that stuff off and transfer?
Yeah.
and get you to trust a doctor out here, to get you
That
to look at, primary care doctors and have some trust in it with your sisters.
First of
I
all, most of
agree.
us come from communities, I'm sorry, Tanaj, that didn't even have adequate health care. So it didn't even matter. We didn't know it then. We didn't know it during the system. We definitely not knowing it
That's
post
right.
incarceration.
How do you think that when it comes to, as we're talking about trauma, right? Like, how do survivors, right, trust and engage again with the community after experiencing this compounded amount of trauma, right? Even prior to incarceration, based like from what you were sharing, Stacey, and I want to just take a moment to one, thank you both for sharing your personal lived experiences, right? Because that I think really helps the community to better understand like this happens every day to women every single day, unfortunately, right? So when it comes to the trauma aspect of things, like how do women who are survivors, how do they begin to trust and engage with the community again?
Well, if you're coming out alone, you kind of can't. That's why we recidivate. Some of us feel safer inside, even though we get harmed inside, but you're not feeling safe out here alone. And that's why it's important to create these safe spaces amongst your sisters. When I tell you the past 3 years was the hardest thing I've ever had to do to get women to learn, one woman was scared to go open the door because how about prisons don't have doors? How about prisons don't have doorknobs? How about you don't have any
Exit
type of,
sign.
come
Walk
on,
out.
exit signs,
Say it
right?
again. What'd you say? I'm
So
sorry.
Exit signs.
it's difficult, like for me, and I think I wrote it in my book, that being able to open a door that had an exit sign and it opened. So you're kind of taught not to open a door
Right,
even with an exit sign because it's not going to open for you.
right,
You know what I mean? It's the
right.
psychological trauma as well that we have to go through. An elevator, we didn't have elevators. We had, but we didn't use them, right? We couldn't do the
Right.
elevator thing unless we had security or whatever, and we really didn't have it inside. We walked stairs, right, or walked wherever. And so even getting on an elevator today, I struggle still.
Yeah,
30 years later, I still struggle. Like getting on an elevator, like, oh, that's something I can do. You know what I mean? It's just the psychological trauma that also that those, and I won't say they're subtle because they're not subtle, right? Because they're just everyday normal things. But a person who didn't experience what we experienced, would look at us like, what? And people do. People do, like, what's wrong? They don't get it. People don't get it. And the effects that it has and it continues to have on us. Because I've watched people who've been out here longer than me still have their own speed bumps
Mm-hmm.
because something is triggering.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I too, I can't get up, I can't do heights. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I've been in prison and on the ground, like we don't, like you said, we can't get in the elevator, it's always stairs. But when you're just at one level and now you're out here and you're trying to be in an elevator, never mind an outside elevator with glass, I
Mm-hmm.
freak out. I think everything's
Yes,
crumbling. Like,
yes,
man,
yes.
You know,
it's trauma.
it's a really good point that y'all just brought up because, when we talk about, even when we talk about gender-based violence, right? Most folks, when we're talking about gender-based violence, really hone in on the physical aspect of things because that's what you can physically see, right? But sometimes the most long-term impact on a survivor is the psychological impact. That's what you can't see, right? And those are the things that keep women up at night. Those are the things that trigger in natural environments and revisiting that trauma over again. And given these challenges that y'all are all sharing, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit to talk about reentry, and specifically around the work that you are each doing within your organizations. And I think it's also important. I wanted to highlight, can we just highlight also the states in which you're working in? Because I think that also really does matter as well. And so I wanted to talk around reentry programs and resources, right? And based on your experiences, what do current reentry resources or programs, right, need or even need to do is to change, right? Based on your personal and professional experiences as founders, as CEOs, executives, what does that look like within your organizations and within your state?
I think the reentry programs that exist, first of all, we all need funding. That is a major, major, major component to any of this work. We need the funding to continue. We need the capacity to build out, right? To create those opportunities and resources that are not there. But for what's existing now, even within my organization, which I am the founder of, right? Um,
And you're in New York, Dr.
and
Hiller.
I'm right, and New York. We're in national, but like right, we're home based in New York. Um, I won't even say mine. I'm going to say the ones that are in this space that say they are reentry programs.
Mhm.
First of all, again, going back to what I said in the beginning, you have to validate women and our experiences. You have to acknowledge us overall. When I go into a space to a reentry organization and these programs, I remember, and it still happens. That's why I created a little piece of light to try to combat that. That they're groups, right? These groups, these circles and things that they have for us to share and to talk and to commune with each other and to vent or whatever. They're male dominated. So the handful of women that are part of these programs don't feel like they can talk, because when they try to talk, I remember, well, it happened and I watched it happen too, right? Um, to try to speak and to share what's going on with them, what's happening. It's like they overtalk them, they shut them down, or if they give them a second, it's just that second. And as soon as that second is over, it's right back to male issues. And I'm not taking and saying our brothers are, because that's just how it's encoded in our DNA. It's been for eons that this has been the way, right? But it's time to change that, because to Stacey's point, they continue to talk about public safety and all these stuff. We're trying to create community safety because we come from the relationship aspect, the familial aspect, because we're nurturers by DNA. We're nurturers. This is who we are. So women will try to make sure we create family dynamic, that space to have everybody nurtured and well taken care of and stuff. And that should be acknowledged, right? But it should be acknowledged in a way where we receive that that support, those resources. I walk into a space, Black women, let's be clear too, have more mental health issues than our white or other counterparts. Why? Because of the trauma we've experienced that is passed
Right.
down from our ancestors, right? This is encoded in our DNA, and that's a fact. DNA changes after so much stress and stuff after a while, and so it's the trauma, it's the lingering effects of something, right? Historical stuff that's happened. And so it's in us. And then I did a kind of a semi kind of like TED Talk thing where spoke about the criminalization of Black girlhood, right? And we have to go back to the school to prison pipeline. Like a lot of our children, including us, been in the system, in the school system that vilified us, basically denigrated us, that made us feel like we were less than, right? And especially Black girls, in different ways than young Black boys, right? And so these resources, these programs need to acknowledge that, have something specific and unique for women's issues, period. To Stacey's point, like I was part of the fight to get sanitaries in, adequate amount of sanitaries and toilet paper, all that whole hygiene stuff in prisons in New York State. And we were able to change the law of that, get it to be, I don't know why it had to be a law, something that's so common sense and just I mean, obvious, right? And it's like the things that are most obvious are the least acknowledged, right? And so these spaces need to or should have spaces for us where we can have for ourselves, where it is focused on our issues and our experiences and whatever it may be. We just need that space. That's why I created a little piece of light, so we can have a safe space to address some of these things, a lot of these things, so we can just have that place to share where we won't be overlooked, where we won't be, where it's so male dominated that we're just like, oh, what? Like we exist, and I love my brothers, but hey, I'm still to this day. I just had a phone call again based on the issues that are happening in New York with the murders of, some of our incarcerated brothers and the women too being harmed inside right now. That hey, we have some issues too. We have to be at the forefront of this conversation. It can't just be one or two. No, we need to be there as well. It affects us too. What affects you affects me, might affect us differently, but it's still an effect, right? And so we I can't emphasize enough. And so what we need are just those spaces to have the programs and the safe spaces, all those things that we need to just acknowledge that we exist, acknowledge the things that we need to help us reintegrate, to have a successful reentry, whatever that may be. You know what I mean? We just need to just be acknowledged, damn it.
Mm. Stacey, what are your thoughts around what do current reentry resources or programs need to do or change? Dr. Hilton brought up some really great points around the
Great
acknowledgement,
points.
right? Communing women to just have a space to really talk about the specific issues that women are facing. Also, really, also, Dr. Hilton mentioned even around the history, right? Understanding the history of
Generational historical trauma. That's right.
exactly.
Genetics. So, I mean, I almost was going to say, she said it all. I can't, nothing else I could say. I mean, that was perfectly expressed. I think
Mhm.
that the other part of it, from my experience, is that we don't often allow people with lived experience when we're in these spaces, in these different programs. I came out of prison and went to school, and I couldn't get a job for almost 5 years, and I couldn't figure it out. And so when I did, I had to do some trickery stuff. I had to put my prison sentence on my resume under education and do all my bullet points, and mopping the floors to working in CCU to working in the law library, and then every program I did. And this company, this substance abuse company, thought that was great, thought that I worked there. And I was like, no, I didn't. But I ran it afterwards and told them everything I did. So I kind of built myself up, and I got the job to work in treatment, right? I was really focused on being a substance abuse counselor and having a trauma-informed care with a mental health background. I didn't want to go into deep mental health as much as we have deep, some of us. I didn't want to do all the disorders. I wasn't ready to help nobody with schizophrenia. That's deep work. I wanted trauma-informed care. While I was in the work, moving up, coming from recovery specialist to case management to counselor, leaving Gavin Foundation, who gave me the shot, and going over to Victory programs here in Boston, I was hit with, hey, ethics, you can't self-disclose. And I'm like, wait, what? You hired me because I had to go into the Department of Public Health to even have a interview with them, so they could have a psychologist to interview me to show that I don't have no criminality in my blood no more, whatever shit, whatever you needed to do. And now you're telling me I had to do that. I had to give you a whole portfolio of what I did in the prison. You knew I came from a prison. Then what I did with my college degree, and then you hire me. And so all the women I'm in here serving comes from where I come from: community, harm, school, prison. Some of us was even in drug treatment over the years. So I'm a big old self-disclosure. Like ethically, with being a licensed clinician, they say you shouldn't self-disclose. It's not about me. Well, It isn't about me as much as my story, as Donna said. I've had the same experience. We're circumstantial, we're different, same experiences. I've been raped, you've been raped. I've been stabbed, you've been stabbed, or shot, or someone's murdered, or all the things in our families, all the same stuff. And so, how do we begin to heal? We're never going to heal. If you know, some people think, oh, I thought you got a master's and you're healed. I'm like, really? You thought these type of European teachings made me heal? How about I almost get kicked out a bunch of times because I'm saying, no, that's not true. When you're in these educational spaces that aren't telling us our own history, right? They can really enlighten us to not want to go back and cause harm because we don't know how to deal with our trauma. I mean, you know, so when you're in these different spaces, even for our people, like Donna said, I mean, we're all walking around with a lot of trauma, but are we willing to go get therapy? Are we willing to be in a healing circle? Are we willing to take a moment and just kind of meditate? Like, just slow down for a minute and try to meditate. A lot of us can't even close our eyes because triggers keep coming in. That's why they call it post-traumatic stress. It comes later. It comes out. These triggers come in the night. These boogeymans and monsters and all this stuff. And a lot of programs that have been designed in our communities focus on, and a lot of women, like Donna said, won't even go into program, won't even go into treatment. Why? Because we're mothers. Who's going to watch our children? You already sentenced me, and now my kid is adopted somewhere. And now you want me to come in because I'm drinking, and now I got to give my kid up again? I don't even know where the first one is because you adopted it because of your laws. All these draconian type of legislative laws and rules in these programs need to be really disrupted and undone because it doesn't fit us as women. We're not ever seen. We're often invisible.
Absolutely. I want to add to that too. You said something too, sis. You said that we there's so much going on in our lives that we can't even, you know what I mean, focus. But you know what? For here in New York, right? And I know to be the truth across the country, right? Because we worked on and got past the largest parole legislation in the country, right? That they don't even give us the opportunity to exhale.
Ain't that
We
something?
come out, we're released with a list of mandates.
Yes.
Now I had I was in there 27 years. I helped create the programs that exist not just in New York State prisons, but in prisons across the world, actually.
Yeah.
I helped create some of those programs that have been replicated across the world. I had to come out and do what?
Mhm.
Like go from scratch to start. I said, wait a minute, I created a curriculum. You know what I'm saying? The first curriculum anyway, you know what I mean? Or whatever, the program for it. And I have to do what? And so we are so inundated with stuff. We don't even get a chance. 27 years. I didn't know how to walk across the street with the street light because the street lights change.
Yeah.
Right? The white man say go, the red man say stop, and all these other things. We didn't have we had just simple lights. You know what I mean? And all these other things and all this movement, craziness. We didn't have all that inside. I have no big trucks or even cars. Zoom, zoom, zooms flat by. I'm like, you know, you like this. You're trying to navigate your way. I didn't know where parole was. I didn't know I didn't know how to take a train. They went from tokens that I remember to cars. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to use it. The bus driver cursed me out. The train people on the train called me a stupid bee and all kinds of things because I didn't know how to move. That in itself, the trauma of release, the trauma of being released is never spoken about. I'm
Mhm.
always bringing it up. So I have to say it here that we're not even given a second to exhale, much less a minute. And
Mhm.
not even a New York minute to
Mhm.
exhale into okay, give me a second. Let me get this in. because I'm coming out of a place that's all I know. And you didn't teach me anything out here to help me figure it out. I had no idea what this phone stuff was. I'm putting the camera right, but this stuff, smartphone stuff, I don't know how to do. I still don't really. I'm not
Mhm.
astute at this. I'm not tech savvy like with the computer, and I'm not. I didn't grow up with it. But you
Mhm.
want us to know all this stuff, to do all this stuff just like that. That's why we have recidivism.
Mhm.
And you don't want to even give us a bed an address, a bed to lay our heads, to rest ourselves so we can inhale and exhale and also have a place
Mhm.
that we need for any employment or anything else, anything. Right?
Mhm.
And so we never even really get into the trauma of being released, especially after decades of
Mhm.
incarceration. That is traumatic.
Yeah. I want to thank you both for uplifting that. And I also want to, I know Stacey, for your organization for New Beginnings Reentry Services, y'all are in Boston, Massachusetts. So I wanted to uplift that as well. And like, as you were all sharing when we're talking about reimagining reentry resources, I think a common theme from what I'm hearing, going back to what Dr. Hilton was saying, is just like women need a second to just breathe, right? Us let us just exhale for a moment to gather what's actually happening after so many years or decades behind the walls, right? And just having that moment for self is critical for building that foundation for a successful reentry. And as we're closing out for our conversation tonight, I would just really love to know, when it comes to building and fostering healing, and you all do this so well within your communities, what is one piece of advice that you would give to others who are really working to build a community around creating these healing spaces that are celebrating the unique lives of women who are survivors and women who are just as impacted overall, for Black women and girls specifically? What's that one piece of advice that you would give around building community?
I don't know. I don't, as a clinician, I often say I'm not in a position to give advice, but I do make suggestions. And I think the biggest suggestion is like, stay the course. Don't waver your mission. And I get that from Donna and Andrea and my sister Kiana. I mean, these women have a mission. They don't change it. They're not like, okay, because I could get funding, I'm going to change my mission over. No, stay the mission and stay the course. And I say that to say, if you really want change to happen, that's the only way. It doesn't happen overnight. I came out of the prison in 2010. I was determined to go back and get my sisters. Well, I did, with the help of the National Council, with the help of the local community of Families for Justice's Healing, and through the national movement of participatory defense. We brought home Angie Jefferson, who was serving a natural life sentence unconstitutionally. That's a woman who saved me in the prison, right? Kimia is home and she's just getting it. She was my cellmate. So when you think about that, if I had wavered just for the money or for prestige or to be known, and I was known anyway, I was known to the police. Hustling, all you thinking that you're creating some identity or some shit. I had identity crises. Ain't no time for none of that. The time is to bring our sisters out of those environments and stay the course.
Mm.
I stayed the course. I couldn't maintain a residential, but I maintained the house. And now we're an adult day center and women are being free. And we still have the same mission to provide the services, to provide the resources and services to lessen recidivism. So you never have to feel like you're supposed to be in a prison again. And because of that, 8 years later, I did my nonprofit 2016 after I completed my degree. And 8 years later, I just stayed the course and I couldn't get funded for that. But when you are a leader, you know when to transition.
Mhm.
You got to I needed to transition because I'll be 64. I'm not going to have no stroke because I'm fighting this, I'm fighting that, I'm arguing over, I'm done. No, I need to now do self-care. I need to do 4 days a week, no overnight, 10 to 11, 11 to 4, and go home and do some meditating myself. And just know when to transition. And so transitioning gave me the opportunity to get a $2 million grant. I
Wow.
couldn't, I was getting 25 here, 50 here, but when someone sees you in the work and you're really like Donna, Andrea, there's national leaders who I've learned from, who I follow. This isn't to throw pun on nobody else. This is just to say, like, I've been around some powerful women who have taught me to stay the course because it's going to happen. It can't happen when you don't stay the course.
So stay in the course, knowing when to transition. Dr. Hilton, how about yourself? What's that one piece of suggestion and or advice?
One of the things, and thank you for that, Stacy. That was really, yeah. Thank you for that, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Just makes me smile. Just my heart smiles. Yeah. But I want to say this though, for those that want to get in this space and say they want to help build community and create healing spaces and stuff, be honest with yourself. Be honest and make sure it's really what you want to do. Because you don't want to come into this space, especially if you have walked this walk, and create something that adds to the trauma, right? Because we can do that. Some of us will take funding from those places that want it to be run just like the prison was run, or those kind of systems or institutions were run that caused a lot of our trauma, right? Or added to a lot of our trauma. And for those that didn't walk the walk, please do your best to understand our walk, our experiences, so you won't create those same traumatic situations, experiences, and places, right? Spaces that cause trauma. Because that happens, and I see that happens a lot. You know, those who come into the space, they're saying they want to help and they want to do this, and they create these reentry programs or whatever, but they're very much like going into the system, right? Um, and that's not good. So I just intentionally, I always challenge people. Most of my talks when I'm speaking to groups of people, young people getting into law, or criminal justice, or whatever it may. I don't care where you are in the world. I always say, look yourself in the mirror. Look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, speak to yourself, be honest with yourself. Why am I doing this work? Why do I want to do this work? What do I want to get out of it? And if you find yourself keeping it on I, then maybe it's not for you. Because
Right.
this is a we kind of work. This is a we space. Because I'm here, I know what happened to me. I know I need to heal. But my focus is to help my sisters heal, help my people heal, and then help my community at large heal. In that walk and in that work, I know that I will heal even more than I am. Because that's the quid pro quo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So be intentional and make sure that you're here for the people
Yeah.
and not for self.
I love what you just said. This is a we kind of work. And like you said, being intentional, understanding your why, looking yourself in the mirror and having real, genuine, truthful conversations as to what is even bringing you to this work. And, I just want to say thank you both for that. And I also know that y'all wear a lot of hats. We know that. We have not just executives and founders and all these different leadership roles that you play on different councils and the community work that you're doing, creating these community-led solutions, I know y'all got some upcoming events and opportunities that people need to know about. So can we just take a few moments to just share what your each organizations are doing within your respective states to just let the world know, right? How can we further support and really center the work and center the opportunities where people can really engage in supporting the work?
Thank you, Donna. I love you, sis. So I'm really excited that we are reopening a new program, like hasn't been done before in this community, right? The Adult Reentry Day Center that has intentional spaces for healing, for art therapy, we have a museum, a little mini museum. You're going to walk in and you're going to see the work of the movement, of the sisters, of our history, of our historians, of our educators. You're going to have, when you walk in, the projector jumps on, and then you're going to start hearing Brian Stevenson's work, Angela Davis's work, Ruth Gilmore's work, Donna Hilton's work. I mean, all the videos that I could steal, I'm sharing the work. It's beautiful. And then we have a podcast on the third floor, but more so, we have theater in the basement. When I tell you that we designed this intentionally, the basement is for music therapy and applied theater. We have Berkeley coming in. They just extended their contract with us from music therapy to now having students come in and do storytelling workshops and, spoken word. We got little tables down there to make it look like a nice little club setting, and curtains, lights, and speakers in action. And then in between, we have a restorative justice room for healing circles. And then we have a healing room with the little singing bowls. Like after you come from substance abuse counseling or group therapy down here, or AA and NA meetings, and then you're in with restorative justice and you're releasing all this stuff, then you're in the transform harm room. You go in the little healing room and sit tight, sit in a little sandbox and just fiddle or hold a piece of crystal. We designed something in here that's phenomenal. But more so, we have an education room. We have computer literacy, we have financial literacy, we have leadership academy. We zoom into the prison every Tuesday night, the women's prison, the men's pre-release, and we just got approved to go into Shirley Medium, a bigger platform of the men's prison, and predominantly young Black men are in there, right? And so we mean business. They get on, they see us, they're like, y'all doing what? This is giving them hope for when they get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, much, much more, but we're opening, our grand opening is April the 5th. And the bigger part is one of our graduates who came in 2 years ago, a young woman who was being trafficked and forced, to make up money, straw buying cars with no money, and had a federal case. And we walked her up to New Hampshire and had the judge sentence her, let her do a sentence here. That happened. 2 years, she graduated after a year, went to culinary art. Today, she is a chef. Today, she has her own organization. I'm calling her to be a speaker for my program for the grand opening. She's calling me to say, sis, can I come in and teach culinary? I'm like, what? Of course. She's like, can you help me market? I'm like, what? That's what the space is for. Yes, yes, yes. This is what we're talking about. I don't like to say that we came in broken, but she kind of came in here like beat up and lost the respect of her grown children and a whole bunch of stuff. And now to see this Black woman walk in her purpose,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're talking about. So more to come.
That's
More to
April.
come. I have a young man who said, hey, y'all, in y'all's meetings, I'm feeling like I want to go out here and sell some dope. But y'all just changed my mind because I can't believe the work you're doing. We're young. We want to rap. We want to sing. We could dance. I said, young man, I got a theater in the basement. He's like, what? He was here today. Yes, This is a community space for us to grow and learn and heal and never go to prison. That's what we're doing.
This is April 5th, right?
April 5th, yes.
It's
And
huge.
we got
All
our
right.
community resource fair, our 4th year in August, and we're already starting to roll on that. So, we bring formerly incarcerated people to the table of all of everybody, bankers, housing, mental health, healthcare, you name it. 40 tables be out there. This year we hope it's going to be 60. We started out with 10 tables, 20 tables, last year we had 40 tables. This year we hope we can make it 60. But if not, we just want our people to know that there's resources out here. And there's a lot of us coming from the prison environment that is creating spaces.
Yeah.
Like whatever you want to do, you want to get a 401, 501, C3, C4, whatever you want to name it. We just want you to grow and own your own stuff. You know what I mean? We don't heal. Don't be looking for something normal. We came from abnormal environments, from before prison, during prison, and you're coming to look to be normal? No, baby, you got to create your own normalcy. That's where we at. Whatever that looks like for you, I'm going to help you get there. That's it.
I appreciate you. I'm excited. April 5th, y'all heard it here first. Excited. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dr. Hilton, what's going on in New York?
I don't know. I was excited about that. I'm trying to in my head, April 5th. I got to be in Ohio on the 8th or 9th. I'm like, anyway, like that sounds really cool, sis. Congratulations. That's awesome. It's for real. So looking at some things, right? A few things, right? And I'm looking at some things based on the climate that we're in and the fear and all the angst and everything that's going on. Um, no, and I wanted to say this. So we were the first, I believe, if I'm wrong, please someone let me know. But I think we're the first organization as we are to incorporate ourselves into Fashion Week, into the fashion world. And thought about that before, like because there are a lot of incarcerated individuals that have minds like you cannot believe, imaginations that are so creative and just so, oh my God, amazing. Great. I mean, when we were inside, say, I mean, no, y'all probably did it too, having little shows and stuff. We were making costumes, or they were, because let me take me out of it, making costumes out of the garbage bags, black garbage bags, and red garbage bag. We had black leather outfits, red leather outfits, curtains. We were turning them into gowns and pantsuits and all kinds of stuff. So imagine. So it's like, wait, we doing this too. And then the 50 years of hip hop. And so we incorporate ourselves to Fashion Week to show that people outside of those names have been a part of the hip hop culture and fashion from eons and created some stuff, right? Like, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but the pants sagging off the butt comes from prison, even though it's being used in the wrong context. But let's be clear where it comes from, right? So there's a lot of us involved in some stuff. But what we're looking at this year, so what we just talking about it, we're putting together now preliminary, but it's going to happen the day before Mother's Day in May. May 10th, I believe, right? I think Mother's Day, May 11th. We want to do like a community give back, and our community is broad. So we're going to host an event in Harlem along with our partner community organization, Hope and Healing Home for Vets, along with Sleek's Hair Studios, Monique Stokes, and with the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and supporting us as far as what we're doing. We want to have like a little give back for our women, right? Especially right now. I mean, of course, black women are the front and center, and our children. But we want to put something together. Tables, people coming with their tables, pop-up kind of shop, selling their wares or just giving information. But also, we want to have nice little hors d'oeuvres, as we would call it, right? And some drinks and stuff, a little mimosa, nice little mimosas for the mothers and whoever, and just some music, just a vibe, because we need, it's like all work. And that what you said about showing people on my social media how to try to incorporate some downtime in between time. Majority of what you see on my social media, I am working. It's just I probably have an hour or two or something that I'm like, okay, or before I get to something or after I'm finished with something, I try to incorporate it. Why? Because I was one of those that had a stroke doing this work. I had a stroke in 20 right, in 2015, and I learned some lessons, so I try to balance it out. It's not easy, but I try. Something else that we're also doing, so that's May 10th for sure. That's going to be in Harlem. Uh, and we're looking to do something bigger at the end of the year. We're looking to, this is preliminary talks. I know these things, definitely Mother's Day is going to happen. Sure, the end of the year thing is going to happen too. But we're trying to figure out what that would be, because I also want to make sure, keep in mind, because I want people to have a space to let loose, to like, it's not always just the work, the work, the work, and you have to hear somebody talking to you, whatever. Want to incorporate different things with that, right? It's definitely based around our health and our mental health, right? Uh, so looking at that. But right now, also, I just want to say, I know some of us work on campaigns. I want to mention that we're leading, co-leading a campaign called 13 Forward. I had to bring it up, especially what's going on right now. That we're working on legislation to get people that are incarcerated a fair wage. I'm being really honest with this and transparent. I'm sure that we won't get people to get minimum wage that are incarcerated, because that's going to be, the community will not understand that. But I'm sure people will understand that treating people like slaves, right, under the 13th Amendment, and to this state's amendment, Article 1, in New York State, that we should not be treated as slaves, and 10 cents does not do anything for any, right? Doesn't do anything for anyone. And so if we can get some, $3 or $5, we'll take it, right? We'll take it, because we are valuing and acknowledging people for the work that they do. So our campaign has a good shot this year. Unfortunately, based on the murders that are being committed, Black correctional staff and officers, on these individuals. And so, it's bringing, shining light on what's going on, not just on the, correctional side, officer side, but also on those that are incarcerated, our side. I always say us, because I'm still them. You can't get rid of 27 years just like that. I'm sorry. And so those are things that a little piece of light is doing. I look forward to the Mother's Day thing. We just need a moment to exhale. If y'all want to come have some mimosas and hors d'oeuvres, there's some nice music. We're going to have some really good, very popular DJs and some other stuff happenings. Yeah, place and time being worked on now, and stuff, and the vendors. But yeah, all are always welcome. This is the community at large, and help us get it, lend your voice to our campaign to get it passed. Has a good shot this year. We always focus on passing legislation that'll affect the entire country. What we do in New York has been replicated across the country, right? And so we want to continue that. If we can get it done, help us get it done, and we'll help you get it done wherever you are.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you, Dr. Shelton, as well as all the work that your organization is doing. Stacy, as well in Massachusetts, and just again creating these healing spaces, right? And building upon the community, which is what we've been talking about in our entire conversation. And as we're closing, this has been a very insightful and, more importantly, meaningful conversation. And so I really just want to thank you both again for your time, your experiences, sharing your personal as well as your professional experiences with us, and just your expertise and commitment, commitment to this work. And as we were talking about earlier, just staying the course despite the circumstances. And so, as we're wrapping up, just taking that moment to express the gratitude, in addition to you all having this conversation today, the gratitude for you all being leaders within the Sisters in Solidarity Network, and how important it is for your voices to really help shape community led solutions that we hope have a lasting impact on directly impacted Black women and girls. And to everyone watching, I hope that this was helpful, as well as taking notes on all these gems that have been dropped today, and really just encouraging everyone who's watching to continue to engage with NBWJI through the Sisters in Solidarity Network. And this is just the beginning, y'all. So again, Dr. Hilton and Stacey, for really launching our webinar series, and most importantly, the launch of Women's History Month. Let's note that right there. And so we really look forward to deepening more of these conversations in the coming months ahead for the year of 2025. And again, thank you all so much in helping us launch the Leading the Way campaign for this month of Women's History Month. I appreciate you all so much. So thank you.
We appreciate y'all. We love NBWJI, and I'm
Yes.
here for the long run. I'm here in whatever capacity that I could be.
Right.
Just love my sisters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you. This was beautiful. And I'm here. I love Dr. McKinney and the movement of NBWJI. I'm in and I'm grateful. So thank you so much. And always a pleasure to be with you, Dr. Hilton. I love you. I'm just in awe. Thank you.
Love you.
Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
You
Bye.
too. Thank you.